So let me first begin this video by saying that I am just as skeptical of the title as you are, and it takes a high degree of self-control and restraint to absolve my cynicism when I read this particular post. So I hope, like you are going to enforce some restraint on this part and just be a little bit more optimistic to myself, because there is some credence, there is some esoteric science to the particular claims in this video. So first and foremost, I grew 2 to 3 inches at 25 years old. Here is my system, and we're going to start off with photographic evidence. So this post was written by the gentleman in the center here, and this gentleman is also the same individual on the right hand side here. So as a marker of evidence, as it were, for these kinds of claims, we are going to use the gentleman on the left hand side for a reference, as I believe he also does in the particular post. So if I'm not mistaken, this is his father on the left hand side, and you can see these individuals are not too dissimilar from one another. They're the same person, and the individual in the middle is now on the right hand side and is clearly 2 to 3, maybe even 4 inches taller than he was photographed in this video. Now, we have no conclusive proof that this individual is 25 years old. We are just going to have the faith and confidence that this individual is telling us the truth. I would say that, part and parcel of my cynicism is I don't know if this person is wearing lifts. I mean, they're going to have to be pretty tall lifts, maybe even stilettos to create the same effect here. We can't see a full body picture. But again, judging by the context of these photos, these look like pajamas. So I would imagine that this individual might not even be wearing shoes. This looks like they're out somewhere and he's going to be wearing shoes. We don't know that, of course, but again, I'm trying to be favorable to this individual's plight here. So let's dive into the context of the video, gentlemen. So I made a comment a few years back in which I still get a lot of DMs about regarding a claim I made where I grew in height from 5'11" and 6 foot to 6'2" and 6'3". Here is a photo from a few years back. I'm in the middle, father is on the left. Here I was around 22 to 23 years old. So this is 22, 23 to 25. This photo is from today, Christmas. I'm 27 now. Okay, so oh, so they did this when they were 25, pardon me. We just took photos, so I figured I'd just show my proof. Yep, his father's on the left and I'm on the far right. Now, the third point this individual makes in regard to a system that was able to finalize this particular result for him is significant. It may not seem significant when I describe and disclose it to you, but it's probably the most important thing, and the author of this post also does so. The irony is, although it seems simple, execution on it is probably the most challenging aspect, because the technique is probably one that you have heard of in the past if you are privy to these kinds of, let's say, esoteric and metaphorical systems. But we will do our best to try or I will do my best to try and disclose this in a way which is palatable to yourself. So the preface: I was already tall comparatively, so I didn't have a pedestal about growing taller. This is going to be significant as we move on. This is when I was when I was getting into Neville harder. So the reference he's making here is to Neville Goddard. So I decided just to try it out. I accomplished this in 3 days and only realized it was done because multiple others in my life said I looked taller. So how did I do it? Going straight into the steps here. Step 1, this individual went into a deep state of meditation, or the state akin to sleep. He references it doesn't matter. All I was in just a calm, relaxed, meditative state. That's it. The reference to state akin to sleep here just describes that kind of dreamlike, hypnotic, theta wave state you exist in when you wake up in the morning or you go to bed just before you fall asleep at night. Often people find a lot of success in these states, as the word I referenced there is theta wave, which is a slower, relaxed, impressionable brainwave where your subconscious mind is more susceptible to ideas and programming fundamentally. Step 2, he imagined his legs growing and that they had growing pains for 2 to 3 minutes. So we're in this meditative state, and they're bringing their attention and awareness down to the femurs, the tibia, and the fibula, and they're starting to visualize, not just visualize, but also imagine the feelings or reference and sensations that they were having when they went through puberty. I'm sure you're all familiar with these sensations of growing pain, and try to emulate that for a period of 2 to 3 minutes. And then step 3 said it was finished. And the final step, he watched some anime before he goes to sleep. Now, it doesn't have to be anime, but the idea he describes here, it is very, very important because it shows that he wasn't worried or cared about whether or not it would come. I just said it, I claimed it, and it was done. That's it. Nothing else. They didn't affirm, they didn't visualize, they didn't check their height daily, nothing. And then literally, they did those steps and they went about their life as normal. So the individuals the question that I had, and perhaps you're having at this time, is how did they know that this worked? How did it happen? How the outcomes realized for this individual? He goes to the gym every day, and a man I talked to every day came up to me. We were at eye level, and years of seeing him, I knew this. Suddenly this day I realized he was slightly looking up at me. That gave me a little bit of goosebumps, and I grinned. Then another piece of social proof was when he went out to dinner with his cousins. I see them now and again, maybe 7 times a year. Prior to going, I was telling my brother that I was taller. He didn't really buy it because we're both around the same height. We went to dinner and both of them said, "Damn, did you grow?" I looked at my brother and he couldn't really say anything about it then. The final piece of social proof was measuring himself, and sure enough, he was 2 inches taller than previous. I didn't measure until others told me I was taller. Then I figured out I'd satisfy my lizard brain with objective, scientific, empirical truth, and sure enough, it was satisfied. Now, there's a couple, I'm going to go into some other bits and pieces he mentioned there, but I just want to reiterate step 4. As he highlights, it's the most important step. The trick to any form of realization, certain outcomes, is this idea of detachment. It's this idea that the only true reality is the internal reality, and the external, the 3D, is only 1 to 2% of the reality that you particularly experience. Your internal state is the one that leads you. Most people are of the opinion that the world is, that they are reacting to the world, pardon me, but in fact, I invite you to do the opposite. In fact, the world is reacting to you. The world is reacting to your inner state. So what this individual is describing here, that they already knew this was done. They were already inhabiting and at a congruency and consistency with an internal state that was with a certain height. And the 3D, the reality around them, the Maya, the illusion, could tell them as much as they wanted. No, you're this height, you're this height. But there was a lack of congruency. There was a lack of consistency here. And because the 3D takes a while to kind of catch up to our internal state, as this individual describes here with this paradigm, he did this at 25, then 27. You see the photographic evidence of this. It's that almost internal delusion that what you're experiencing inside is the truth, is the only real thing. And the external, as much as it can be convincing and we can fall into its frame and fall into its trap, we must reject that and realize that the only true state is the internal one, the one that is lead you, the one in which you should marry yourself to, is the one that you are inhabiting internally. I cannot make or emphasize that point enough. So he does make a couple conclusive points here, which are fairly consistent to what I am saying. Years later into Neville and this realm, I'm almost 28, I'm realizing that the 3D is a big liar. So for those of you who are 5'4", 5'5", what I would tell you to do is get really good at denying the 3D for what it is, since you are likely having is a high importance of growing taller. So deny what you physically see and only care about being taller internally and persist. The individual is working on different manifestations in their life and he is seeing some progress there. But what I think what I believe really worked from this individual, or why this worked for this individual, is what he prefaced at the start. He said that he was already tall comparatively to other people, so he didn't have a pedestal. He didn't have this larger than life idea on his outcomes of becoming taller, because there was a lack of significance he placed on that particular thing. Unfortunately, when people are going about this idea of, and I hate these new agey terms, law of attraction, manifestation, but let's just say reality creation, because that's fundamentally what you're doing here. The problem is they start off too grand with outcomes that they are emotionally sensitive to, which means you put a lot of energy and a lot of onus on this idea on, I must become taller, I must make this money, I must get this car, I must. It's so important. If I do not have this thing, then my life is completely ruined. And you understand how that affirms or creates a state of lack internally. You only get what you already have. So the world sees you in a state of lack, so it gives you more lack. But instead, if there is that silent detachment, that holy indifference, that it doesn't matter what the 3D presents to you, because inside you have the money, you have the car, you have the height, you have the attraction that you want, then the universe looks at you and goes, we need to give him what he already has. We need to catch up to his state. That's fundamentally what you're doing here. The 3D is a liar. The only thing that is true is the internal state. The 3D world, the visible light spectrum, only takes up about 2%. What about infrared? What about gamma? What about X-ray? All these things are real, but you cannot perceive them through the senses. If you had no nose, you would never know that there was the information of smell available to you. In the same way, this is not too dissimilar whatsoever. You need to constantly affirm that inner state, that you are consistent with the feeling and the ideals and the beliefs that you would wish to see manifest in the world. But the irony is, you don't wish to see them manifest in the world because you already have them internally. Become congruent with that state now, and it is simply a matter of time, not a matter of how, but a matter of time when these things catch up to you. These are not theories, these are facts, gentlemen. Speak soon.